and darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy, and this time I'm reviewing Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. This is a collection of short stories that retell classic Norse myths from a modern perspective with Neil Gaiman-esque writing styles. It feels like Neil Gaiman's writing, even though we're relying heavily on the source material, which are the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda. For this book, I listened to the audiobook for most of it, which is read by Neil Gaiman, and I totally love it anytime you can listen to Neil Gaiman read his own writing. So this book has a lot of introductory stuff going on in it. Like, there are 40-some pages of introduction. The first short story, it starts at page 43. It's called Mimir's Head and Odin's Eye. So if you guys want to skip all the introductory stuff, the really dense introduction is why I started listening to the audiobook. This is, I think, 15 short stories that are pulled directly from Norse mythology and just retold. A lot of them have things that are added to make them more relatable to a modern audience. It has a lot of Neil Gaiman's writing style in it. The dialogue is really funny and lots of banter, and it's great. So our main characters in these stories are Odin, Thor, and Loki. Odin is the Allfather. He sacrificed himself to gain wisdom and also gave up one of his eyes to gain more wisdom. On the whole, pretty smart guy. He's in charge. He's the big kahuna. However, as with all of the characters in here, he's not 100% good and not 100% bad either. Actually really love the complexity of the Norse characters and how nobody's true good, true bad. We also have Thorin here, who relies on his brute strength and his magical hammer Mjolnir to beat people up, and that's pretty much his solution to any problem is, can I beat it up? And to be fair, most of the time that actually works. However, he's not very bright, and at times Thor is kind of an obnoxious character. Not my favorite. My favorite is Loki, the trickster god. He is a drunk in this version, and he pretty much makes an ass out of himself quite frequently. However, he is the most interesting character in these stories and kind of a motivating force to where these stories go, and especially as we're leading up to Ragnarok at the end, because Loki is the one who causes it, and these explain why. Loki's kind of this bag of good or bad. Really depends on his mood, whether or not he's going to help you. His mood and whether or not he thinks it's going to help him more to help you, basically. So sometimes he's on the side of the gods, and sometimes he's not, and trying to determine which is which is really kind of the interesting part. Whether or not the gods are going to figure out which is which. So in these stories, Thor's default whenever anything bad happens is to immediately assume that Loki's at fault first and then prove that Loki didn't do it, maybe. I think it's kind of funny and a nice running joke throughout these. These stories do get darker the further we get into these and the closer we get to Ragnarok. The ones at the beginning are really light, really funny. They're just cool adventure stories. The last few get really, really dark. So these stories were a lot more connected than I thought they were going to be. I knew they shared characters, but there's a lot more building off the previous stories. And Ragnarok is the Armageddon, the end of the world in Norse mythology. It's the end of all things, the end of the gods, the end of Earth. But it's also a new beginning, the start of something else. And it's a really cool part of Norse mythology and kind of what separates it from, say, Greek or Roman stuff. We do get to meet several of the other gods. Some of my favorites were Freya, who is the most beautiful goddess. A few of these stories revolve around people wanting to marry Freya. I also love her low bullshit tolerance, basically. She recognizes that the gods around her are idiots, and unfortunately, it's her lot to kind of be stuck with them. She's also one to question Loki and kind of assume that whatever Loki is doing is bad first, and then he has to prove that it's not. Other interesting gods are Heimdall, who is the Watcher, who kind of just sees everything. I would not want to be Heimdall. I would not want to just watch these guys make mistakes over and over and just watch for threats. It doesn't sound that interesting. We have two of Odin's sons, Balder, who is the beautiful, and everybody loves him except Loki, and his brother Had, who is blind. And I kind of love these two brothers. They're slightly ridiculous, especially Balder, who thinks he can do no wrong, and I feel immensely bad for Hod. A, because he's blind, but also at least one thing happens to Hod that was totally not his fault. I really love Loki's family. Like, I love Loki the most. And then I thoroughly appreciate the fact that his wife Sigyn appears and his children Hel, the Midgard Serpent, Fenris Wolf, Narfi, and Vali make appearances and how they play into the story. Totally on the side of Loki and his family, basically. I feel so bad for Sigyn, though. Like, being stuck married to Loki. I really want to know more about Sigyn, please. Why is there not more about Sigyn? I know that that's a fault in the source material, and it's not Neil Gaiman's fault. I was actually just really pleased that she showed up at all. On the whole, I really enjoyed these. These are entertaining, they're fun, they're adventurous, the characters are complex and interesting. I really love Loki. So let me know in the comments below if you've read the story, what you think of it, or if you are knowledgeable in Norse mythology. How do you feel about these characters? And I know that there's something wrong with me that I love Loki as much as I do, but I just do, guys. He is so fascinating and so interesting, and I love trying to figure out Loki's motivation. I gotta say about Ragnarok, though, it kind of is the gods' faults. Like, Odin and Thor, and a lot of them kind of brought that on themselves. I'm totally siding with Loki. On the whole, I gave this 4 stars, and yeah. Peace out. I love you guys, and keep reading. Bye.